toxic femininity as kind of the flip side coin of toxic masculinity, but for women, because that's not what it is. Well, it is, but not in the way that anyone talks about it. Anytime I see mention to toxic femininity, toxic feminist is exactly this. It's to address any video or content of mine that has a slight feminist tone. Because people see something that they think is toxic, which is just a woman they don't agree with. And then they see that I'm a woman and they think, that must be toxic femininity. That's it. The issue is it's literally completely the opposite. It refers to the adherence to gender roles that women are assigned. Gender roles that uphold patriarchy and maintain women's lower status beneath men. It is a concept that restricts women to being cooperative, passive, sexually submissive, gentle, and deriving their value from physical beauty while being pleasing to men. But how can this be? I'm very glad you asked. See, when we talk about toxic, what we mean are traits that are deemed to be stereotypically masculine, like aggression, dominance, and the extent to which those traits become internalized to such a degree that they become toxic. It's very easy to see how having too much dominance and too much aggression is not a good thing. And when we talk about that, we almost talk about internalizing those masculine traits and also entirely rejecting complementary feminine traits like warmth, compassion, traits that if you were high in dominance would kind of even that out. Toxic femininity is the same concept. It's this over-internalization of traits typically ascribed to women. But those traits, like I said, are things like warmth, competence, caretaking, being emotional, that when internalized to such a high degree can become toxic to the person, but not to others, not like this commenter implies. And to just wrap it all up, here's a peer-reviewed article about what could be considered toxic about femininity. I'll warn you, there isn't much research on this because it doesn't really exist. But this author highlights 5 forms of toxic femininity. Let's see what they are. Emphasized femininity, which focuses with complying with the patriarchy. Hegemonic femininity, which involves the gendered power structure or essentialized gender binary, so thinking that men and women are inherently different and therefore men are inherently better than women at certain things. Normative femininity, which focuses on social norms, how women should and shouldn't behave and dress and act. And patriarchal femininity, which is a combination of social and patriarchal structure. Here's information about them. And the main difference is that while toxic femininity is primarily dangerous to us and doesn't really harm men as a group, toxic masculinity literally unalives us. And I'm gonna guess it's the same men who think feminism is toxic that put us at risk. This is my plea.
All right. Ooh. It was a lot to unpack there.
Very much, very much. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I feel like I just got done running. God.
Or to start, I guess based off of that, I guess I'm a toxic feminist.
I guess so.
Or I have toxic femininity, which I think is the complete opposite. I think toxic femininity is literally people or women that are over emotional about things, and like even in this instance, like she didn't even want to say the word masculinity. Like she was like, you know,
it's not a bad word.
It's not a bad word. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack. What's on the top of your mind?
God, like so many thoughts. Okay, let me just start with things I remember. It's so interesting because first of all, with everything that she said, it was honestly confusing, which is exactly like where I know Satan operates in confusion.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I was supposed to get out of that. Like, let's say if me and her had the same values as far as like how we view men and women and femininity and masculinity, whatever. I don't understand what that audience was supposed to gain from that, from those thoughts. I'm just left with confusion. and so that's where my head is at right now with a lot of the things that she mentioned. And also her idea of what toxic femininity is. Because to me, masculinity and femininity can't be toxic because those traits in and of itself are in essence that come from God. and you can't put a toxic label on it. I mean, there are toxic people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those traits or those essences are toxic or can be. The people who maybe are trying to exude them can be, but I guess I'm still working that out in my head. So, but I can say that I don't see a problem with the patriarchy. I don't see a problem with adhering to gender norms. I don't see a problem with thinking that men and women are different, because we are. And so I guess my question to her would be, would she consider me a toxic feminist? Feminine.
You have toxic femininity.
I have toxic femininity. Okay. So I guess according to her, I would also be I would also have toxic femininity.
Yeah, I'm with you, sister. Yeah. I think the part at the end when she said it doesn't exist is like, maybe there's not research on it because it's still something that's so new.
Yep.
And also, I mean, what's the misandry?
Yeah. Where you like hate men, basically.
Yeah, maybe like that's also like a big thing in like research realms. So it's like they wouldn't even see toxic femininity as a thing anyways.
Yeah.
Oh, super chat. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Alan says, I need to be stronger in tough conversations, bringing clarity and patience. I can also handle conflict with more wisdom and grace while staying firm.
Oh,
that's real.
I hear you, Alan. Me too. That is very real. Cute. It was.
What was I saying? I forgot.
Oh, man, I was thinking something too. I couldn't think of it.
But you had a good point about masculinity and femininity can't be toxic because they are inherently like how we are supposed to be.
Right.
But the individual can be toxic.
Yeah.
Which I would agree with. That's a good point. And that's not a side I've heard in that conversation. So I felt like that was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. Something you said earlier made me think of something, and it had to do with the misandry comment.
Misandry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she said toxic masculinity literally unalives people. Is that what she said? Something like that? Like
something like that. Or I think I heard, I could be wrong, but I thought I heard like toxic femininity.
See, confusion.
I
am confused.
But I do remember the unalive comment. And I was like, that's a lot.
I think, yeah, exactly. I really think she said like toxic masculinity unalives people. And when people have like those all-encompassing takes like that with no evidence to back it up, I have a really hard time like trusting any other information that you have when presenting me with that topic, because it's like, you haven't even proven this thing, but you expect me to believe you on these things. You expect me to believe that toxic femininity, according to you, doesn't exist, but also that toxic masculinity unalives people, when for me and for the women around me, that hasn't been the experience. And so where's that evidence?
Or even like the part where it says like, or she said toxic femininity is the epitome of what a feminine woman would like participate in. So that part's like, you want me to believe you, even though all those things that you listed are things like, especially like as a woman that strives to follow Christ and like have biblical femininity characteristics, like all those things you mentioned are considered toxic, even though those are things that are beneficial and inherent. So
exactly. And to deny yourself of those characteristics as a woman, it's like you are literally setting yourself up for like, I don't know, like just not living truly authentic to yourself. Like, because I could sense a lot of just hostility and anger and things like that. And when you deny those like inherent traits that God has given you, it's like you are left with the complete opposite. And it just doesn't feel good. And like as a woman, we feel, and we want to feel good.
Yeah.
Like, to put it simply. And so I'm left with confusion.
Confusion. Yeah.
Because that was a long explanation. I think it would have been good to like watch it again and like break it up.
Play by play.
Yeah, because oh my goodness. She said a lot.
She did. Should we do a play by play? Producer, should we do a play by play?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
For people to stop using toxic femininity as kind of the flip side coin of toxic masculinity, but for women, because that's not what it is. Well, it is, but not in the way that anyone talks about it. Anytime I see mention to toxic femininity, toxic feminist is exactly this. It's to address any video or content of mine that has a slight feminist tone. Because people see something that they think is toxic, which is just a woman they don't agree with. And then they see that I'm a woman and they think, that must be toxic femininity. That's it.
Okay, so what I'm getting is people have commented and said that she has toxic femininity because she's a feminist, which I would agree with, because being a feminist, especially in this time, is the total opposite of what it means to be feminine, or at least from a biblical context.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it completely denies like family and motherhood and nurturing and gracefulness and warmth, like all those traits that are inherently promoted by the Bible and given to us already. It's like if you aren't receiving those, if you aren't exuding those traits, then you are denying them, and therefore you're doing the opposite. So yeah, and those are the things that the feminist movement today is promoting. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. She said something else too, and I can't remember. Oh, a woman that they don't agree with is so she said that, okay, if you don't agree with me, oh my God, I know what she said, but it's a lot. She was saying that most people say you have a different opinion from me, therefore you're a toxic feminist. That is completely like oversimplifying it, because oftentimes the thing that you claim they don't agree with you on, what did Kevin Samuels used to say? You're using what's the language he used to say? You're using like shame, insults, need to be right, something like that. Something like you're using that type of language when speaking with people. So it's not just about someone disagreeing with you. Oftentimes it's met with a level of hostility that will not sit right with most people. So it has nothing to do with you disagree. You can disagree and be respectful. Yeah. But oftentimes with feminists today, had to be specific, but oftentimes with feminists today, like it's met with the shame, insults, guilt, need to be right. What did he call it? It's called
sign language.
Sign language. Thank you.
Also, I don't believe he came up with it. I think he stole it, but
well, he popularized it, because that's where I got it. He did
popularize it. That's for sure. I believe he got it from somewhere else, and it was
he probably did
pervasive throughout that kind of space.
Yeah.
The manosphere or whatever it's called. So.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So oftentimes it's met with that type of hostility, And I know because I've also witnessed it for myself and been in those conversations, and you don't want to talk to those people. Like it's very much like
It's just abrasive.
It is. It's abrasive, and you have a headache. Like you don't want to deal with it. So I can't exactly say that that's always true because that's oversimplifying the situation. Because we need more context. Basically, is what I'm saying.
The issue is it's literally completely the opposite. It refers to the adherence to gender roles that women are assigned. Gender roles that uphold patriarchy and maintain women's lower status beneath men. It is a concept that restricts women to being cooperative, passive, sexually submissive, gentle, and deriving their value from physical beauty while being pleasing to men. But how?
Concept. It's a concept. It's not the Bible. Actually, no. Maybe that is the concept she's talking about. She's basically saying, yeah, the concept in the culture, which comes from the Bible, which isn't real anyway, that's where all this toxic femininity is.
Yeah, that's the root of toxic femininity.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
You've been lied to.
Yeah, you've been lied to. Like,
oh my God.
There's so much peace in that when you walk in that.
I'm telling you.
Like, for real.
Like, this is what you want. Like, you want this, really. Like, what does she say in The Devil Wears Prada? Everybody wants this, Andrea. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody wants this life. So, yeah, come on, sis.
How can this be? I'm very glad you asked. See, when we talk about toxic, what we mean are traits that are deemed to be stereotypically masculine, like aggression, dominance, and the extent to which those traits become internalized to such a degree that they become toxic. It's very easy to see how having too much dominance and too much aggression is not a good thing. And when we talk about that, we almost talk about internalizing those masculine traits and also entirely rejecting complementary feminine traits like warmth, compassion. Traits that if you were high in dominance would kind of even.
I think it's funny how, like, for men, she said aggression and dominance, but for women, she said warmth and something else.
Yeah, it was something else.
Warmth and I can't remember the last one. But she, like, made the woman's one, like, nice, but she made the man's one mean, you know? And it's like, there's other traits in masculinity that she just kind of like left out that are considered good traits, but then for women she like left in the good traits and like forgot about some of the terrible traits that also come with being a woman. So
exactly, like
interesting.
Manipulation, like that's a big one for women. Women manipulate all the time because that's like the flip side of our traits. Like we're able to do that because we're not physically like inclined to fight people. So we do it with our ability to like mess up your reputation. Like, because we can do that.
Cut deep.
Yeah. With our words, you know? And that's why, you know, the Bible says, you know, to watch how we speak to people because God knows the power that he gave the tongue, and especially with women. So.
Yeah. Continue.
That out. Toxic femininity is the same concept. It's this over-internalization of traits typically ascribed to women. But those traits, like I said, are things like warmth, competence, caretaking, being emotional, that when internalized to such a high degree can become toxic to the person, but not to others. Not like this commenter implies. And to just
like, what? Okay, I get what she's saying. So she's saying toxic masculinity is like those traits she mentioned, dominance, aggression, that's harmful to yourself and others. But toxic femininity, like being overly emotional and that's toxic to yourself, but not to others. So therefore, it's not really toxic femininity. Ma'am, have you ever dealt with an overly emotional woman? Like, that is absolutely harmful for other people. I deal with myself all the time, and I understand how that can be like projected onto other people and how you can make other people like feel around you. It is absolutely toxic. What?
And that's like a very delusional mindset to have, that like your toxic traits don't affect other people.
Right.
So you're just over here being a toxic person, but that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. Oh, that is crazy.
That I'm literally trying to wrap my head around like how. So you just walk around with your toxic traits, and how do they not affect other people? I don't understand.
Wow. I truly think, and it's funny because this is like ironic to me, but I truly think it's because they're not physically hurting someone that it doesn't matter, because like you should always validate my feelings, basically. But it's funny because women are also big advocates of like mental and like emotional abuse. Like, don't mentally abuse me. Don't emotional, you're gaslighting me and all this other stuff. And I'm like, but you don't see yourself doing that to others? Like, that can also happen. That is a big thing that women do it to each other. What do you mean? Like,
I don't know.
that's crazy.
I feel like that falls under like narcissistic traits.
Thank you. That is what the word I was trying to think of. Narcissistic. Like, that is definitely like textbook narcissist. Yeah, my stuff shouldn't affect you. It doesn't affect you. Are you really telling me that? Like, no. That's crazy. Yeah, oh man. No.
Oh boy. Oh brother.
Oh brother.
Oh, brother. Just wrap it all up. Here's a peer-reviewed article about what could be considered toxic about femininity. I'll warn you, there isn't much research on this because it doesn't really exist. But this author highlights 5 forms of toxic femininity. Let's see what they are. Emphasized femininity, which focuses with complying with the patriarchy. Hegemonic femininity, which involves the gendered power structure or essentialized gender binary, so thinking that men and women are inherently different and therefore men are inherently better than women at certain things. Normative femininity, which focuses on social norms, how women should and shouldn't behave and dress and act. And patriarchal femininity, which is a combination of social and patriarchal structure. Here's information about them. And the main difference is that while toxic femininity is primarily dangerous to us and doesn't really harm men as a group, toxic masculinity literally unalives us. And I'm going to guess it's the same men who think feminism is toxic that put us at risk.
Ooh, Jesus wept. Ooh, Jesus wept. Oh, God. Oh, God. I could do a peer-reviewed study right now on how carrots fall from the sky and turn blue once they hit the ground. And that can be published. Ma'am, just because there is a study done on it by a random gender scientist from a philosophy type college does not mean that it is a real thing. Yeah. Like, come on. Oh my God. Oh my God. And it's exactly what I said before, how she thinks like because it doesn't physically harm anybody that it's not real. Like, well, we're not harming men. Have you ever asked a man who has dealt with a toxic woman? Like, you can see the hurt in him. Like, come on. That you can't just ignore that.
Yeah.
Like, both sides matter. Yes, our feelings matter. Yes, our experiences matter, but theirs do too.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's a lot. Ooh. Questions there.
And not many answers.
Not many answers. Yeah, I think like I said, like, it just seems like she and I guess other people that agree and other people that wrote this peer review study just think like any traditional way of, I guess, femininity is toxic, which is a shame because there's just so much I think they miss out on. So much peace, like I mentioned earlier, like just to walk in those things, you know? So
makes me sad.
Yeah, like I actually do feel pretty sad for them in that regard. But the Lord is good, and we will move on to our scripture. And this is very similar to the last scripture I did for the previous segment, but it says, "Strength and honor are her clothing. She can laugh at the time to come. Her mouth speaks wisdom and loving instruction on her tongue." And I think that, again, is like the epitome of biblical femininity. And I think this, young lady in the video that we reacted to, I think she lacked wisdom, and I don't necessarily think that it's good for her health. I don't think it's good for anyone that is around her, because obviously she will exude toxic traits and not think that is going to affect someone. And yeah, so my heart definitely goes out to her and her loved ones and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, so for like the context of that is like in this point, I mean, in this verse, the point is like she doesn't put lesser things above the more important or subordinate. Wait. She doesn't put lesser things above the more important or subordinate the more important to the lesser. So like there's order to things, you know, like, and I think as a woman that is seeking to be biblically feminine and is seeking to follow the Lord, understands that there is order, understands that the order is for a reason. And I think these toxic femininity traits that are actually biblical feminine traits are there for a reason and are inherent in us for a reason. So that's got my take on that. What about you? What say you?
Man, I just encourage women out there to truly seek God and what He has for you, because the world will tell you you are a bunch of things that you are not, and you will be left confused like I was previously.
Okay, let's get into my faithful take. So, biblical femininity is about living as the woman God created you to be. It's about becoming more like Jesus in your unique God-given way.
Yes.
And the journal prompt I have for you is: what challenges do you face in trying to live out these virtues? How can you overcome them? Because I know there are some I am definitely still working on personally, and I am in prayer about them. Miracle, you have anything else to add to this topic?
I feel complete.
Okay.